There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you realize something has changed, not in the world, not in circumstances, but in how life moves through you. You wake up one day and notice you are no longer trying to start. You are no longer gathering energy. You are no longer convincing yourself to move. Action is already happening. Not rushed, not forced, not dramatic, just inevitable. And the strange thing is, no one ever taught you this part. They taught you how to want, how to visualize, how to persist. But they never explained what happens after the identity is assumed, when movement no longer needs motivation. Stay with me until the very end, because what will be revealed then is the reason effort was never meant to be your fuel. Action without effort, when movement becomes obvious. Most people believe action requires force. They believe movement begins with pressure, a push from fear, a push from desire, a push from deadlines or pain. And for a while, that belief seems to work. You push yourself to wake up early. You push yourself to stay consistent. You push yourself to make decisions. But notice something subtle. Every pushed action carries tension inside it. And tension always asks for payment. Sooner or later, the body resists. The mind grows tired. The heart begins to question why it's doing any of it at all. This is not laziness. This is not lack of discipline. This is identity conflict. Because when the identity has not integrated, action must be forced. But when identity is integrated, action doesn't feel like action anymore. It feels like continuation. Neville Goddard hinted at this quietly when he spoke of living from the state rather than trying to reach it. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like this. You don't get motivated to send the email. The email simply gets sent. You don't build courage to make the decision. The decision feels obvious, almost boring. You don't debate timing. You notice you've already moved. This is the moment when life stops asking for permission. And here is where many people become confused. Because the ego expects fireworks. It expects action to feel heroic. It expects movement to feel intense. But integrated identity expresses itself quietly, like gravity. Gravity doesn't push. It doesn't convince. It doesn't rush. It simply pulls everything into order. And when you are living from the assumed state, your actions are no longer personal. They are structural. They happen because this is who you are now. And here is the first emotional truth most people are not ready to hear. If you still need motivation, you are still negotiating with your identity. Motivation is a bridge, not a home. And once you cross it, you don't carry the bridge with you. Think about this quietly. What if the reason action feels heavy is because it was never supposed to come from willpower in the first place? There was a man, let's call him Daniel. For years, Daniel tried to fix his life. He listened to teachings. He affirmed. He visualized. He waited. And still, every action felt like effort. He needed music to get started, deadlines to move, pressure to stay consistent. One morning, something strange happened. He didn't wake up inspired. He didn't feel excited. But he noticed he had already stood up, already showered, already opened his laptop. No internal dialogue, no resistance. Later that day, he realized something terrifying and beautiful. I didn't decide to act. Action decided me. This is not possession. This is alignment. When identity integrates, the question is no longer, what should I do? The question disappears. And when the question disappears, movement becomes effortless. Not fast, not slow, just correct. And right here, pause for just a breath. If this feels familiar, if you recognize this quiet shift already happening in you, comment one short sentence, a declaration, not a hope. I don't need to push anymore. Then let the journey continue. The end of internal negotiation. Most struggle does not come from action. It comes from arguing with action before it happens. The mind debates, the body waits, the identity hesitates. But when identity is integrated, negotiation ends. Why? Because negotiation only exists when there are two versions of you in the room, the one you believe you are, and the one you're trying to become. When those two collapse into one, there is nothing left to argue with. You don't negotiate breathing. You don't negotiate blinking. You don't negotiate standing up when your house is on fire. Action flows when identity is singular. This is why Neville never taught action as a technique. He taught assumption, because assumption reorganizes behavior automatically. The world sees your actions and calls them discipline. You experience them as inevitability, and this is where time begins to change. When you are forcing action, time feels heavy, delayed, resistant. But when action flows from identity, time becomes cooperative. You stop checking clocks, you stop measuring progress. You begin noticing results appearing before the mind feels ready. This is not acceleration, this is removal of friction. What if the reason things felt late before was because you were standing in front of your own movement? There is a dangerous myth in personal development that consistency must be maintained through effort. But effort-based consistency breaks. Identity-based consistency doesn't even notice itself. You don't wake up saying, I must be consistent as this version of me. You wake up as that version, and the actions that follow are simply life being honest. This is why guilt dissolves. Guilt only exists when you believe you should be doing something else. But when identity is clear, there is no should, only movement, only response, only now. And if you feel this shift happening, if you sense your life already wanting to move without force, there is a 21-day challenge available in the description below. Not to create effort, not to fix you, but to stabilize this state, so movement remains natural even when life tests it. You can explore it quietly in your own time. Now, come back with me. When action feels smaller and more powerful. Here is something subtle most people misunderstand. Effortless action often feels less impressive than forced action. No adrenaline, no intensity. And the ego doesn't like that. The ego wants to feel important, but reality doesn't care how important you feel. It cares whether movement is aligned. This is why integrated action feels small, but changes everything. A single message, a quiet decision, a simple no, and suddenly the entire structure of your life shifts, not because you pushed, but because you stopped blocking. This is what Abdullah meant when he said, "You are already in Barbados." He didn't say, "Try to go." He said, "Be there." And from there, movement takes care of itself. What if the most powerful actions of your life will feel so ordinary, you almost miss them? There is no drama in alignment, only clarity. And clarity doesn't shout, it whispers. You feel it as relief, as quiet certainty, as the absence of urgency. And when urgency leaves, fear loses its grip, because fear feeds on delay. When movement is natural, fear has no time to speak. The revelation, why motivation was never the point. Here is the truth, the one promised at the beginning. Motivation is not the engine. Motivation is the echo of identity conflict. You needed motivation when you were split. You needed motivation when you were trying to become. But now, action doesn't require motivation because being has already decided. This is not the end of movement. This is the beginning of a life that moves on its own. And if this resonance feels like home, not exciting, but true, then staying aligned matters. Not as a follower, not as a subscriber, but as someone choosing to remain in this frequency. So if you feel called, allow yourself to stay. Subscribe, not to a channel, but to this way of moving through life, quietly, naturally, already in motion. And from here, everything continues, without effort.